Not everyone who has mood swings is bipolar, and just because you can't finish your homework doesn't mean that you have ADHD. And no, your breakup probably did not cause you PTSD. And no, also your boyfriend probably wasn't a narcissist. Why is this coming up over and over again? Let's get into it. My name is Casey. I'm the Rumble Right Dad, and I've been a therapist for over 12 years. And I've seen people walk into my office with no previous therapeutic experience, no previous interaction with actual therapy systems or anyone who could diagnose, that tell me that they're bipolar and their boyfriend's probably a narcissist or vice versa. And I have to tell you that these are very rare conditions, and it is not something to be proud of that you have a mental illness. Let me put it in the opposite framing. What if we could potentially be proud that anything that you've had mental health wise is actually in remission? When is the last time you saw somebody shout about their remission? Let's try to make that more the standard, because most of these disorders, even if you do have it, a lot of them are not chronic, which means that they don't last forever, but you would require actually treating them, actually trying to overcome them. And instead, the incentive structures in the internet are actually celebrating, rewarding, and patting people on the back for being aberrant or mentally ill, because that's the only unique quality that they think they can have to stand out in a stimulus-rich environment of the internet. And that is a problem, because when you pat people on the back for being mentally unwell, they are going to project that more and more. And guess what? More people will follow suit because they see the affirmation that other people are getting just because they say they have mood swings. That's not something to be proud of. You want to know why? Because you can freaking control your mood swings. So why would it be something that I should give you an attaboy for, or tell you, yeah, you probably have bipolar disorder? Goodness sakes. Did you know that if you actually have bipolar disorder, that comes with mania, which means that you act like you can't sleep, or you have impulsive behaviors, or you act like you're goal directed, or you have multiple focus for multiple days at a time sometimes, which means that it's very difficult, and it looks like you're on certain types of amphetamines without the amphetamines. So that is a very rare condition, and when it actually presents itself, that is not a pretty thing to behold. So it wouldn't be something that I would celebrate. And as a mental health therapist, I'm severely disappointed when someone comes into my office having self-diagnosed. And that is obviously becoming a problem because of the proliferation of self-diagnosis type material on the internet. Watch some of this.
Notes that glamorizing suffering, depression, eating disorders, and mental health issues through artsy online content is confusing the issue. Black and white photos of mystical, emaciated women who stare off into the distance put psychological torment and beauty on the same page. And quotes like, "So it's okay for you to hurt me, but I can't hurt myself," and "I want to die a lovely death," try to justify self-harm.
Many of these mental health conditions are in fact real. The DSM, or the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, does its best to try to describe these conditions in ways that would allow for treatment. But mental health issues are very subjective, meaning a lot of the measurables about them are by self-report. So we just take what the client gives us in terms of their identity in their own symptom picture. So when they come in and that's what they report, oftentimes even primary care physicians are just going ahead with this diagnosis, prescribing medications, and then moving them along their way, at which point you may be able to rubber stamp your bad behavior for the rest of your life. And while I know that that's not what everyone does who has a mental health disorder, it is becoming a trend that the modernity, the Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and even millennials and Gen X see these things online. The incentive structures, again, is wrong. They get affirmed for having a mental health issue. It is time to discontinue that. Let's look at some of the numbers. How rare are some of these conditions in all actuality?
Me, you're the one that misgendered me. My hands are just the ones that reacted.
Another article from July 2021 titled DSM-5 TikTok. asks what happens when social media makes certain mental illnesses go viral. The author, who appears to be a psychiatrist, I guess, says that she quickly learned that dissociative identity disorder, previously known as multiple personality disorder, Tourette's, ADHD, and autism were exceedingly popular on the app, leading her and her colleagues to ask why mental health influencers were faking their mental illnesses.
Bipolar disorder, probably the one that I see claimed the most, is people coming in and saying they have bipolar disorder because they can go from 0 to 100, when in actuality a mood swing doesn't mean you're bipolar. It means you're probably a human being who has mood swings, who has difficulties, who has things you have to deal with, and that is hard to do without misregulating your mood. But bipolar disorder, which does come with mania, again, in most cases, is something that affects about 2.8% of the population. And I would hazard a guess to say that that's even pretty high. And what I mean by that is there's the potential that it's being overdiagnosed because of the increases in people seeking mental health treatment. Maybe that's an access thing. It could be corollary, not causal. However, even 2.8% is probably pretty high.
They pronouns.
Hi, my name is Liana. I use they demon pronouns.
This video is how to use our pronouns. So Liana uses they them pronouns and demon pronouns. So the first sentence would be, Liana is my partner, they are cute, and I am theirs. I love them very much, and I hope they love themselves too. For the demon pronouns, it would be, Liana is my partner, Deem is cute, and I belong to Deem. I love Demon very much, and I hope Deem loves Demon's self too.
Obsessive compulsive disorder is one that people like to say they have a lot if they like to have a clean house. Now, while that is a good thing to have a clean house and an orderly surroundings, might have an orderly mind, obsessive compulsive disorder often comes with not only just thinking about locking the door a bunch of times, but having a compulsion or being compelled to do it over and over, and not being able to control that compulsion. You have to follow through with it in order to be at rest, and then the rest doesn't last long. In any case, Martha, just because you want to have a clean house, that doesn't mean you have this disorder or obsessive compulsive disorder. And that, in fact, affects about 1%, a little bit more than 1%. Schizophrenia, about 1%, and borderline personality disorder, about 1%. And even those incidence rates have gone up so much in the last decade that we have to wonder, is the internet directly causing some of these group psychosis, like the group dancing psychosis that used to happen in the early 1900s, where people just banded together and all caught the same psychotic episode all at once. And it has happened several times throughout history. There are times where nuns meow like cats, and they have to have the military of the town go stop them because it catches from one nun to the other, where they just continue to meow like cats. These types of behaviors do have a group psychotic effect, a group effect that can lead us to understand some of like how do these militaries and these people groups in these countries end up invading places when it's so obviously wrong, or suppressing and oppressing people when it's so obviously tyrannical? Well, there's a group psychotic effect that is well documented throughout history, and the internet is the printing press over again, except instead of delivering the word of God or printing out leaflets against the Catholic Church, we are printing out mental illness pamphlets, rubber stamping them, and giving people an excuse for their bad behaviors, or even encouraging them to lean into their bad behaviors and their compulsions and their idioms. This is unhealthy, and we are rubber stamping. There's something called a self-fulfilling prophecy, where if you behave like you have bipolar disorder, or you will reinforce that belief by behaving worse and worse and leaning further and further into it, and then you'll create the reality that you might actually have this disorder, because everyone around you will believe you do anyway. So part of that identity formation is what people project onto you. So if you project out that you're bipolar or you have that disorder, you might in fact reinforce that belief in yourself, and you get like the placebo, except in reverse, because it's not helping you, it's hurting you.
Videos of her dog and her life. By August, after receiving a comment suggesting that she might be asexual, she began identifying as asexual. Not too long after, she identified as a non-binary aspec lesbian.
I've seen people that are of a juvenile age that come into my office on multitudes of medications that even have been co-signed by their practitioners, whether that's a primary care doctor, in most cases it is, or another mental health specialist. They are oftentimes being given a multitude of diagnoses because their behaviors just look like human nature that we are told is perfectible. We're these blank slates, and if there's anything wrong with us, it's because of environmental cues. That is flat out wrong. Humans are born broken. The mental health industry does not have the capacity to say that, because then they might have to believe a narrative which billions of people believed forever, which was basically that we're born into a broken world with broken, sinful nature, and that it is not perfectible. But nobody's willing to say that, I guess, except for me, the only based conservative, possibly Republican therapist left on planet Earth, or at least the one who actually believes those things, including the Bible. There are Christian counselors, but they're not the ones proliferating the mental health diagnoses structure on our current system. So what's to be done about this? First of all, don't project mental health disorders onto other people. Don't project it onto yourself. Don't ever blast out your mental illness, because frankly, if you have a certain mental illness, you're never going to get a security clearance. And if someone at a government job wanted to bring you in and they saw your TikTok, you might be out. It might be a wrap. Don't project your mental illness, because it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. There's the possibility that you're in fact reinforcing that condition or reinforcing those symptoms. And then when you look up or you hear like, oh, these are some of the other things that might mean you have ADHD, then you're like noticing those symptoms a little bit more readily, because you're like, oh, well, I actually do those things. Well, the bad news for us, if you do have ADHD, is everybody else does too at times present with those symptoms. And so I guess just you can diagnose a lot of people with that, depending on the season that they're in, depending on the system that they find themselves going into for that diagnosis. So don't project your mental illness. Don't project one onto someone else. Don't believe that you have a mental illness just because WebMD tells you might, because you might not. Anyway, don't believe that all mental illnesses are chronic. Don't rubber stamp your bad behavior because you think that TikTok diagnosed you with a mental illness, or anyone else for that matter. It's not a rubber stamp. You can change your behaviors. You can control your behaviors. It's not an autopilot. You're not an autopilot of your mental illness. And actually, if you have had remission symptoms of any of these mental health disorders, that would be something to shout, because that means you actually have resilience. Instead of just incentivizing the mental illness, why don't we incentivize people dealing with their mental illness? And that might mean that I would have less people coming into my office, and I would love it if society worked me out of a job as a therapist. My name is Casey. I'm the Rumble Right Dad. If any of this content can be of service to you, I would love to earn your support. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, and I really appreciate it. It means the world to me to have this supportive community, because it's been lonely out here.